Chapter 17. The unconscious Sith apprentice was taken down to the brig level of the Republic cruiser and secured within one of the holding cells. They kept him restrained to a cot, with the Force inhibitor shackles still secured tightly on the boy. The Jedi Master ordered a squadron of clones to guard the cell before hurrying to the bridge to contact the Jedi Council while Ahsoka was rushed to the medical bay. The holographic images fizzled into view above the comm station situated on the command deck. Master Kit Fisto bowed his head respectfully when Yoda, Mace Windu, and Obi-Wan Kenobi appeared. Master Fisto spoke without preamble. Ahsoka has been successfully rescued from Utapau. Thank the Force, Anakin will be most pleased with this news. Obi-Wan stroked his bearded chin with a growing smile. Ahsoka has been wounded. She was dueling the Sith apprentice as Skywalker proclaimed. She is currently being treated in the medical bay. Anakin will not be happy when he learns of this. Obi-Wan's smile disappeared as he turned a little more serious. There is something else you must know. We have captured General Grievous's son, alive. We currently have him detained in our brig. He is unconscious and will remain so for the remainder of our voyage back to Coruscant. Do not underestimate this boy. Remember first and foremost that he is a Sith apprentice, trained by Count Dooku himself. Mace Windu severely cautioned with arms crossed and a deep frown. Do not fear, we have him shackled in Force inhibitor restraints. He will not escape. I will personally see to it that Anakin doesn't attempt anything foolish and that he remain far from the Sith boy's reach. He's very protective of his Padawan, Obi-Wan reassured the other Jedi. A good idea, Kit Fisto concurred with a grim nod. He was well aware of Anakin's abrasive actions and knew that Skywalker would no doubt attempt to interrogate the boy. Once Coruscant you reach, bring the son of Grievous before the Council. You must decide the boy's fate. We shall, Master Yoda intoned gravely. Yes, Masters, we shall reach Coruscant in 4 standard days. We won't stop for anything and shall remain at light speed. Your previous assignment has been reassigned to Master Plo Koon. Bringing the child before the Jedi Council is your top priority, Mace Windu firmly stated. Yes, Masters. You can expect our arrival soon. May the Force be with you. Master Fisto bowed his head respectfully as he heard the other Jedi echo his sentiment before their hollow images fizzled out of view. The Jedi Master stood on the bridge and observed the streaking stars outside of the forward viewport, lost in his thoughts. Soon his reverie was broken and he headed down to the medical bay to check on Ahsoka. Her wounds were too severe for standard treatment and she had to endure back to submersion in one of the tanks. Upon hearing the news, Ahsoka was not happy. Once the pain returned full force after the numbing shot wore off, she was more than willing to do whatever it took to heal quickly just so the pain would stop. The sight of her severe injuries made her sick to her stomach. She was stripped down to her rudimentary garments and prepped for the treatment. The Togruta teen was given a sedative to lessen the pain and to make the transition into the Bacta a little easier. Before she knew it, she was floating within a tank and the sedative took full effect and sent her into blissful unconsciousness. The Bacta, once initially introduced to injuries such as deep gouges and scorched flesh from either blaster wounds, lightsabers, or any other weapon of that caliber, could sometimes sting like hell. Master Kit Fisto arrived just as Ahsoka slipped into unconsciousness and received the report from the clone medic. The Togruta child was going to endure 2 days within the Bacta tank to heal the worst and deepest of her wounds and then be treated conventionally after that. The young Jedi was going to make a full recovery. The Jedi Master placed a hand on the glass of the tank that the girl was encased in and thanked the Force that she had been saved. If they had arrived any later than they had, Ahsoka would most likely be dead right now. She was very lucky indeed. Keep me informed of her condition, Kit Fisto commanded of the clone medic. Yes, sir. The medic saluted as he acknowledged the order. The Jedi General left the med ward and opened a communications line with a clone sergeant stationed outside of the Sith child cell. This is General Fisto. Alert me when the boy awakens, but do not, under any circumstances, allow anyone to enter his cell. He is dangerous and is not to be taken lightly, Kit intoned gravely. Yes, Sir. We will comm you immediately once he does. Master Kit Fisto cut their communications line and returned to his private quarters to meditate. This was going to be a long 4 days. Once General Grievous received his son's distress beacon, he wasted no time in trying to reach him. He commandeered a local citizen's speeder bike and raced off in the direction where his son's transmitter had issued the SOS signal. Once he arrived on the sea, he felt the deepest kind of despair he'd ever felt in his life as he caught the distant, telltale glimpse of red retreating thrusters high in the sky that belonged to none other than a Republic gunship. Those damnable Jedi had just kidnapped his son. Again. Grievous snarled angrily and felt the deepest, darkest urge to destroy something. Once the 4B1 battle droids returned to him to report that their mission to exterminate the Rhodian spies was a success, the general of the droid armies screeched in fury and assaulted them. He ripped them apart with his bare hands as his bloodthirsty rage consumed him. He failed. He failed at rescuing his son, and now the Jedi were most likely going to take young Zekalov to their Jedi temple on Coruscant. Once he had calmed enough to achieve and resume reasonable thought processes, he immediately went to the pawn authorities and ordered them to show him the video footage of the hangar and landing pad where his son had been fighting the Jedi Ahsoka. Grievous watched the footage with pride as he saw his son best his opponent. His eyes went wide and then narrowed when he saw the devious Jedi Master creep up behind Zekalov, followed a few short minutes by a garrison of clone troopers that arrived on the scene. Before his son could deliver the finishing blow on his wounded Jedi adversary, he was cruelly robbed of his victory when that same damn Jedi Master he had fought outside the sanctity of his private lair engaged his son in a duel. General Grievous admired Zekalov just watching his amazing skill and lightsaber technique. The cyborg Kalish growled angrily once the vid footage began to near its end as the clones surrounded Zekalov. The damn Republic troopers cheated. His son didn't stand a chance against both a Jedi Master and 20 clone troopers. That was completely unfair. He noted with awe the force repulse power Zekalov achieved and felt extreme pride at the fact that his stubborn son refused to go down so easily despite all the odds. Grievous laughed gleefully at the fact it took about 5 stun blasts to render the child unconscious. His son was a force to be reckoned with, just like his father. The general soon turned serious and made copies of the footage and brought it with him. He boarded the small craft he and his son had piloted to the planet before their mission began and ordered Senti 7 to make contact with Count Dooku. Once the hollow image of the Sith Master appeared, Grievous wasted no time in reporting their exploits and that their mission had been met with success with the exception of Zekalov's unforeseen abduction by the Jedi. Count Dooku narrowed his eyes at Grievous as he felt his anger beginning to stir within him. This turn of events is most unfortunate. If you fail to secure your son, it will result in your own termination, General. Make no mistake. He must be recovered. The longer the boy remains in the custody of the Jedi, the greater the possibility that they may succeed in turning him against us. That must not be allowed happen. I assure you, my lord, that Zekalov will be rescued. I know the boy well, Count, he will never be swayed by the lies of the Jedi. Grievous growled deeply in defense of the child. If Zekalov cannot be rescued in ample time, he must be eliminated. He cannot be allowed to become a Jedi. Do you understand me, General? General Grievous knew that to hesitate in his reply would prove his true caring for the boy, so wasted no time in his response. Yes, my lord. He will be rescued, and I promise you, he will never become a filthy Jedi. If that happens and you fail to terminate him, I have others that won't hesitate to do the deed for you. Whatever feelings you believe you possess for the boy must not interfere with your mission. Do you believe you are capable of this task? General Grievous growled as if he'd been deeply offended. My son will die by my own hands should he choose to side with our enemy. I promise you, Lord Dooku, that whatever feelings you believe I may have for the boy do not exist. Grievous growled deeply and narrowed his eyes at the Count as if silently daring him to challenge him. His answer must have satisfied Dooku, for he soon dropped the matter entirely. They better not. Such feelings, if they were to exist, can jeopardize your mission. As it so happens, Fortune may be on our side. I have recently learned that my master Sidious is also on Coruscant. I will inform him immediately of the situation and see if he is willing to assist in a rescue effort. Your son is very valuable to the separatist cause. Do not fail me, General, or my master will see to your next punishment personally. The old man cut their transmission. General Grievous growled angrily and took the pilot's chair to open a communications line with Captain Selk. The first order of business would be to tail after the Republic ship that currently held his son captive. He knew, however, that the ship he was currently sitting in would not be able to travel to Coruscant due to its limited flight capabilities. This ship could only travel to neighboring systems with the current hyperdrive that was installed and would only be able to endure light-speed travel temporarily. Grievous was loath to admit that this craft just wasn't built to travel from one end of the galaxy to the other. He needed his flagship for this mission. Grievous planned to keep his fleet on the outskirts of Republic space and use a smaller craft to travel to Coruscant. Using cloaking and holographic technologies, he would be virtually unseen on the surface of the planet. As long as the holo emitter didn't malfunction or break in the heat of a lightsaber duel if such an event occurred. The general of the droid armies contacted the separatist fleet and ordered they meet him in Utapau's orbit. He would have to wait at least one day before his flagship arrived. He growled at his current circumstances and hated feeling helpless. His son needed him. And he was stuck on this damn planet. The Kaleesh cyborg reluctantly left the craft and ordered Senti 7 to remain on the ship and ordered that the droid stay in his custody rather than attempt to engage in his primary directive, which would be to naturally trail after Zekalov. Grievous had a feeling that he may need his unique droid to assist him with the rescue mission. With deep resignation and regret, the Jedi-slaying warlord returned to the bustling city. It was going to be difficult to pass the time when he was beside himself with worry. He had to not only pass the time more quickly but needed to distract his troubled mind. He could only pray to the gods that he would be able to reach his son in time. Zekalov groaned as he slowly regained consciousness. He tried to move, but the clinking sound of restraints alerted him to the fact that he was most likely locked away in some kind of cell. His eyes adjusted to the lighting, and he growled angrily when he was entirely aware of his current predicament. There were glowing blue handcuff-like restraints on his wrists binding them together. There were glowing blue cuffs on his ankles that had a bit of chain length between them so he would be able to walk when the time finally came. There were thick leather straps keeping him firmly and hopelessly bound to the berth he was currently occupying. He snarled in rage and tried to break free. He stopped his useless struggles when he physically felt that there was no escaping this one. Maybe he could use the Force to break free. He tried to access the Force and was terrified when he felt absolutely nothing. No, this can't be possible. He didn't feel any connection whatsoever to the powerful energy field he was so used to being a part of. It was like he was no longer Force sensitive. Icy fear gripped his rapidly beating heart and his breathing quickened. What had these Jedi done to him? Impossible, Zekalov whispered as he felt this weakness slowly begin to consume him. It was the worst kind of handicap. It almost felt like he had lost a vital part of himself, like there was a part of his very being that had actually died. It scared him immensely. No, 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 no. This can't be happening. He pulled and strained against the restraints bound across his chest and midsection and screamed in outrage when every effort to get free failed. For the first time in years, since he had first arrived in Dooku's custody, the boy felt like crying. He felt alone and afraid. If he could access the Force, he was sure that his feelings regarding his imprisonment would be entirely different and that he would be able to actually escape. He hated feeling like a helpless child and it enraged him. This can't be happening. How is this possible? Those damn Jedi must have done something to me. Zekalov despaired in his anguish as those words kept repeating, over and over again, in a never-ending mantra. He never realized until now just how powerfully attuned to the Force he had been. Now it was gone. While under Dooku's tutelage, he had never been intricately taught about this evil Jedi voodoo, The Sith child used a great amount of effort to concentrate and energy to fight whatever was hindering him to reach the Force. For a brief moment, he thought he had felt the powerful energy field that bound everything and everyone together again. But the connection slipped away like sand through his fingers. A sharp, agonizing pain lanced through his skull in response when he finally hit what was blocking him. It was a force block of some kind, and when he tried to break it, it hurt like hell. Tears formed in Zikalov's eyes, but he took in a few deep breaths and forced himself to relax. With sharp-eyed scrutiny, he took a good look at his surroundings. He was in a drab, grey-slabbed cell with a single overhead light panel. There was absolutely nothing in the room he could use to help him escape or fight when the Republic troopers, and most likely the Jedi, eventually came to retrieve him. He was hopelessly trapped. It appeared that escape was impossible. The boy smiled when the thought occurred to him that when there was a will, there was most certainly a way. And Zikalov had the greatest will right now. The boy had to think this through. He probably had limited time before either the clone troopers or the Jedi Master that captured him came to visit him in his cell. He needed an escape plan. The first thing he would need to do is break free of these restraints. Unless he could miraculously find the person that held the keys. Zikalov had to have more than one option. He doubted he would be able to fly a craft the way that his wrists were bound, so flying out of here was out of the question. The boy stubbornly continued to think. Was there a chance that while he was hopelessly cut off from the Force, that the Jedi Master would also be unable to sense him? If so, perhaps if he managed to break free, the Jedi would be unable to follow him. The Kalish child deeply frowned when the thought that it would be extremely difficult, to the point of being nearly impossible, for him to get past a whole ship full of clones without being seen. Damn. The longer he lay there, the more time he had to think. Now that he was cut off from the Force, chances of him being able to access future events would be next to none. So it would be very difficult to avoid whatever was coming. He honestly didn't know what was going to happen, and that thought in itself frightened him. He was most likely going to be brought before the Jedi Council, which meant they were currently heading for Coruscant in all likelihood. Zikalov was not looking forward to that, or to meeting Yoda face to face. That small green Jedi creeped him out the way he was able to practically get inside his head. The boy had the grim thought that they would probably try to turn him to the ways of the Jedi, and if that failed, would probably execute him because he was dangerous to them. The son of Grievous growled darkly when the possibility that they would try to use him as a hostage for ransom to coerce his father into surrendering or meeting their demands crossed his mind as well. The son of Grievous swore he would not go down without a fight. If he was going to die, he'd be sure to take a few Jedi down with him. His head snapped sharply to the left when he heard the opening door that was diagonal from where he lay. Oh boy, here we go. Were they about to torture him? Zikalov hoped not. Were the Jedi evil enough to torture and kill children? His father had told him that the Republic troopers had done so in the past when invading a separatist-controlled planet, and that a few Jedi had been known to have done the same before Grievous ended their lives. The boy inwardly smiled at the thought. His father had slain them without mercy, just as the Republic had done to the innocent lives that occupied that system. An eye for an eye, as the saying went. It was no less than what they deserved. His reptilian eyes narrowed defiantly when he saw two clone troopers accompanied by Master Fisto enter the room. If only he could get his clawed hands around their wretched throats and choke the life out of them. Zikalov knew he would never be able to accomplish such a feat due to the size of his hands. He hated being a child. It was pretty damn inconvenient most of the time. Especially when he wound up in situations like this. His previous thoughts concerning whether or not the Jedi standing near him would in fact do as his father claimed they did to helpless little children like himself returned. Crap. I'm not just an ordinary child. I'm a Sith apprentice. They probably will question me, torture me, try to turn me, and then kill me. Great. He squandered his fear and met the level gaze of the Jedi Master. The boy kept his mouth shut and waited for the Jedi to speak. Do you know where you are? Zikalov refused to answer and turned his head away to stare at the wall. Kit Fisto continued. Do you know why we have captured you? Zikalov resisted the urge to roll his eyes. This Jedi was boring him with stupid questions he already knew the answer to. Look at me, child. Zikalov, to his horror, found himself turning to look at the Jedi, almost against his will. What in the seven hells is this new trickery? Wait, why was this familiar to him? The boy began to panic when he began to realize what was happening. When I ask you the next question, you will answer it, Fisto frowned at him. You can't make me, Zikalov hissed icily. The Jedi smirked minutely at his words before speaking again. On the contrary, I can, the Jedi Master turned very serious. The Jedi turned to the two guards standing within the cell and barked out a gruff order. Leave us. The clones saluted in unison with identical cries of yes, sir, before exiting the room. Once they were gone, Fisto sighed heavily before turning to look at Zikalov again. It is not the Jedi way to force one to speak beyond their own will. Unfortunately for you, I must make something clear. You are a Sith apprentice. You are our prisoner regardless of your age. If you do not cooperate with me, I will have no choice but to take drastic measures to see that you do. Zikalov gave the Jedi Master a very distrustful look and had a very bad feeling about all of this. We begin now. First question. Do you know where we are going? Master Fisto crossed his arms and furrowed his brows in severity, silently promising to hold true to his word if the situation called for it. Coruscant, most likely to your Jedi temple, Zikalov glared angrily at his interrogator. It wouldn't kill him to answer one question, would it? He was curious to know what the Jedi meant when he said he had the means of forcing him to cooperate. Did he mean he would use a truth serum or other torture method to wring the answers out of him? I'm not giving this criffing scum any answers. He can't make me, he had to be bluffing. Zikalov had a hard time making himself believe his own words. Very good. Next question, where was the last known location of your father's fleet? Kit questioned casually. Zikalov remained tight-lipped and growled as he shot a death glare his way. There was no way he was going to divulge that information. They couldn't make him. At this point the boy wasn't sure what he should do. Should he test this Jedi and see if he could learn anything from him? Or keep up a heavy resistance? He made the decision from the first moment he opened his eyes to learn of his current status as Republic prisoner, not to cooperate. You would be wise to answer the question, young Zikalov. If you do not answer me, I will make you. Bantha shit. Go kiss a Wookiee, water dweller. Zikalov snarled in rage at the Jedi's threat as he jerked against his restraints again. Then you leave me no choice, young one, Master Fisto shook his head almost sadly. Tell me the last known location of General Grievous's fleet, the Jedi waved his hand in a subtle gesture. Zikalov fought the urge to answer the question and his eyes widened considerably when he understood what the Jedi was doing to him. No. You can't. Master Fisto narrowed his eyes and repeated the gesture, this time touching Zikalov's mind a little more forcefully. Tell me the last known coordinates of your father's fleet. Zikalov couldn't stop the traitorous words from slipping past his lips. The Altari system. A Jedi mind trick. He just used a criffing force technique on me and it actually worked. No. This can't be possible. How can you do that? Zikalov began to panic and desperately needed answers. The Jedi Master gestured subtly towards the glowing blue shackles bound to his wrists and ankles. You are currently wearing force-inhibiting restraints. Meaning, you are unable to use the Force or defend yourself against any other Force user. Do you understand your situation now, child? Tears began to well up in his golden eyes and he shook his head. No. You can't do this. Oh, but I can. And I will if you choose not to answer the next question. Zikalov shook his head as his eyes widened in stark terror. He felt so naked and exposed, so vulnerable and at this Jedi's mercy. He had no way to shield his mind without the Force, making it much easier for Fisto to manipulate him as if he was nothing more than an ordinary denizen of the galaxy. When did you last see General Grievous? Zekalov shook his head, feeling numb. This couldn't be happening. No. I can't tell you that. Fisto repeated the Jedi mind trick, although this time it took the Jedi another 5 tries to get the boy to answer. He had to be careful how far he pushed this child. The mind of a child could be fragile. Even one so brutally conditioned as this Sith boy. When did you last see your father, Zekalov? He fought the Jedi's mind trick with all the strength and force he could muster. His head was hurting as if an angry herd of banthas had just crushed it underfoot. The pain was becoming unbearable. His master Dooku had been brutal when it came to training his mind. His Sith master taught him the basics when it came to defending himself mentally in the event he was weakened or injured to the point of not being able to use the Force. Dooku did teach him how to shield his mind without the aid of the Force, but his teachings had been rudimentary at best. Perhaps the old man didn't trust him. Zekalov's hate for his master merely doubled at the realization. It was his master's fault he was failing so epically. If he had taken the time to even mention the fact that Force inhibitors actually criffing existed, let alone had given him extensive training regarding this, he might have stood a better chance against this Jedi. Tell me, Zekalov. Tell me when you saw your father last. Zekalov screamed in an agonized rage as he fought to shrug off the Jedi's influence. No. Never. I'll never tell you. Zekalov choked on his own words. Tell me, Fisto waved his hand again. The boy was weakening. I saw him. Zekalov ground out each word with considerable effort as he clenched his jaw and squeezed his eyes shut. He felt tired, so tired. He couldn't give up, not now. He needed to protect his father. Yes? When? Yes, no. When, Zekalov? When did you see him last? Yesterday. Zekalov growled in self-loathing when he failed yet again to stop the traitorous words from gushing forth from his parched lips. Where was he, Zekalov? No, stop. Tears began to leak unbidden down his scaly face. The Jedi Master stubbornly persisted. He used the Force yet again to influence the boy into answering truthfully. Tell me where, child. Arg. Zekalov screamed in agony as he fought with all his might to restrain the answer that was begging to be released. His small body strained against the restraints and sweat soaked his clothes and beaded down his face. He had been resisting this Jedi Master for at least an hour now. At least it felt like it. He clenched his hands into fists and kept his jaw clenched. It really hurt now. But he couldn't betray his father. He couldn't let this damn Jedi Master win. Tell me where. Arg. No. I can't, I won't, please stop. He couldn't stop himself from crying like a youngling. This was becoming unbearable. I will stop once you have answered my question. That I can promise you. Now tell me, where did you last see your father? Zekalov panted and felt like he was suffocating. Why had it become so hard to breathe? Was the Jedi using the Force to choke him? No, I am not Force choking you, Zekalov. Stop resisting me and all of this will end. Tell me where you last saw him. Kit Fisto's voice sounded so calm and soothing. I'll never tell you. Master Kit Fisto resorted to asking simpler questions and interrogated young Zekalov for another 2 hours before returning to his original question. Zekalov, where did you see your father last? Zekalov jerked against the restraints and screamed out the answer, hardly coherent enough to realize he had even said it. Arg. I saw him on Utapau. While screaming the last word, the child succeeded in physically breaking through the birth restraints and knocked over a very shocked Jedi Master. Zekalov snarled in rage when his mind was finally released from the Jedi's mental influence and actually managed to scramble awkwardly out of the door. The Kalish boy was proud of himself for making it this far as he stumbled out into the hallway. The 2 clones guarding the room cried in stunned dismay to see him there, and the boy managed to tackle one of the clones down and clumsily grabbed his blaster rifle. He shot wildly in the direction of the second trooper. He got a lucky shot in and managed to hit the clone in the leg. He was too tired to revel in dark satisfaction as he watched the wounded clone fall down. Before he could run away, the second clone recovered himself and grabbed the boy from behind, ripping the blaster away from his still shackled hands. "I won't let you win. You will all be destroyed. I swear it." Master Kit Fisto walked out into the hallway and slowly advanced on the thrashing child. "Go to sleep." The Jedi Master put 2 fingers against the Kalish boy's forehead and sent a concentrated burst of force energy into his exhausted mind. With his strength and the last of his defiant energy spent, his body went limp in the arms of the clone. He stubbornly fought the irresistible urge to sleep, but he already knew he would lose. Zikalov found himself sink down as his world went dark. "My master, I have urgent news." The holographic image of a kneeling Dooku hovered above the holodisc currently held within the hand of the galaxy's most powerful Sith Lord. "I'm listening, my apprentice." Zikalov has been captured by General Kit Fisto and is on a Republic transport heading for the Jedi Temple on Coruscant now as we speak. Small rivulets of blue lightning lanced between Sidious's fingers as he clenched a hand tightly into a fist. "Your failure will cost you dearly. You, not the General, will be held responsible for this. Zikalov must not be allowed to become a Jedi. This child is the key to winning the war. It would be a shame to lose such a powerful asset." "Yes, my master. A rescue effort is already in motion." "Good. In the meantime, I will see what I can do to correct your foolish blunder." "What would you have me do, master?" Dooku bowed his head and looked down at the floor submissively. Sidious had to fight back the cackle building up in his throat at the sight. It deeply pleased and quite amused him to see his subject grovel at his virtual feet. Nevertheless, his student's grave mistake could not be overlooked and the consequences would be dire. "Just know, Dooku, that your mistake will cost you. You may not be as fortunate as the boy when I'm through with you," he furiously hissed. "I understand, my master." Dooku's shoulders slumped in defeat. "Transmit the details concerning your plans to me immediately. I will take care of the rest." "As you wish, my lord." The Sith Lord severed the communications feed and sat silently in his chair, darkly brooding. What could he do? He had to keep his identity a secret a while longer from the Jedi. He finally formulated a perfect plan. It was so wickedly delicious that he couldn't keep the pent-up cackle caged up any longer and set it loose. "Zikalov, you young fool, you will finally meet your true master." Chapter 18. The general of the droid armies paced restlessly across the Invisible Hands Bridge, occasionally growling in annoyance when a couple of the droids paused in their tasks to watch him. They were most likely wondering what had him in such a foul mood. "Get back to work." Grievous snarled at a droid, whose primary post was to monitor for any unusual activity or enemy communications chatter in deep space. The last thing they needed was a Republic fleet dropping unexpectedly down on them. Zikalov's father had no desire to be delayed any further. His son needed him. The Jedi could be interrogating him. Or worse yet, torturing him. Grievous let loose another pent-up snarl and slammed a fist into a thick, heavy-plated wall near a control console. He left a nice dent in it. The general blamed himself that the Republic troopers and that Jedi scum had taken the boy in the first place. If he had gotten to his son sooner, maybe this wouldn't have happened. What is taking so long? Grievous howled his impatience. He wished he had more organic crew members. The droids were oftentimes incompetent and lacked the innate intelligence that a sentient being had to offer. He felt like he was babysitting these droids most of the time. "We are nearing the coordinates now, sir," a B-1 battle droid pointed at his navigation console. Finally, Grievous narrowed his reptilian eyes as he gazed out of the nearest viewport. He could delay no longer. He began barking out orders as he marched to and fro from one end of the command deck to the next. "Keep our fleet back near the edge of Separatist space. If the Republic shows up, engage the hyperdrive and retreat." "Yes, General." Once I have entered Republic-controlled space, initiate complete and total communications silence. Do you understand? Grievous hunched his massive bulk above the unflinching droid. At least this model wasn't as easily intimidated as its other relative B-1 battle droids. Sometimes it irked him, when some of these seemingly fearless and emotionless droids simply proved to be what they really were, just hardware and programming. Nothing more, nothing less. Centi 7 was a rare exception. That droid had been programmed with an actual personality. Grievous thanked the stars that he would have someone to talk to that wasn't just another mindless drone during the trip. Good. Don't damage my ship while I'm away, Captain 771, Grievous growled out in a clear warning tone while pointing a sharp duranium claw at it. Yes, sir. He would make good on his threats, and at least the droids were smart enough to recognize that. He wished Captain Self was here to command the invisible hand, but he had been called away by Count Dooku for some other assignment. Grievous despised the wicked old man and hoped by some miracle of fate that his current overlord would in the very least do him a favor and keel over from a heart attack. Especially since the opportunity to personally kill the man had yet to present itself. The general of the droid armies really hoped that the Count hadn't called Selk away just so he could assign him the task of terminating Zekalov if Grievous were to fail the rescue mission at hand. The cyborg Kalish felt that Selk was loyal enough to side with him rather than with Dooku. The Nemeodian captain had been like family to the boy while Grievous was away on his missions before the Count took Zekalov into his midst, but Zekalov's Sith Master had a way of instilling fear within his subordinates. There was a possibility that the captain might crack under the pressure, especially if his life, the lives of his family, and his homeworld were threatened. If Captain Selk chose to betray the general and his son, Grievous had no qualms about killing the man. It would be a pity to be sure. But Shelob swore since the day he learned that Zekalov was his child that he would protect him, no matter the cost. Grievous, with lightsabers clipped both to his hip plating and within the folds of his cloak, ran with all haste down to the hangar bay and made it up the ramp and into what used to be a small smuggler's ship. It had recently been dubbed the Dark Shadow, and it was going to take him directly into the heart of the Republic. The general felt it necessary to give the ship a name since it had become so personal. It was the ship he and his son had flown in together on their first mission to Utapau. It had since been heavily modified, and the travel range and capabilities of the craft had been greatly expanded. The smuggler's ship was now a stealth ship. Centi 7 was already on board and taking stock of their inventory and going through the necessary supplies that they would need in order to make this rescue effort work. The general flew through the pre-flight sequence with rapid, albeit perfected, timing. The sublight engines whirred to life and the ship slowly lifted into the air once the anti-gravity thrusters activated. The whine of the engine grew in greater intensity as the Dark Shadow shot out of the docking port once the ship was free of the hangar bay. Grievous blasted off with all haste and wasted no time in punching in the coordinates for Coruscant. With the flip of a switch, the general was shoved back against his seat by the G-force explosion as the small craft blasted into a streaking star line. Once the gravity pull lessened, he leaned forward with a heavy sigh that always came out more like a guttural growl and ran a gentle, metallic hand over his mask. It was a habit that he had still retained since his transformation into the cyborg creation he was now. This small gesture was a clear indication that he was greatly stressed. Grievous pulled out a star map and charted a course through a rather common shipping lane. His approach vector to the surface of the planet was sure to go smoothly, and none would be the wiser that the infamous general of the droid armies was infiltrating the shining capital of the Republic itself. He chuckled rather gleefully to himself in response to the thought. He looked back up to watch the streaking stars whiz past the forward view screen, and his eyes softened as a mournful croon escaped his vocalizer. He didn't realize until now how much he missed Zekalov, and just how protective he had grown of the boy. There was one frightening question that kept nagging at his mind that he was sure he would have during the remaining 3-day journey. What would he find when he finally found his son? "Hold on, my son, I'm coming for you." Zekalov was confused. The last thing he remembered, He had been fighting against a clone trooper. Now he found himself free from his shackles and restraints. He was standing right under a tree line at the edge of a field of brightly colored flora. There was a little girl running around giggling while picking flowers. The smiling form of the man that carefully guarded her called her by name. "Leia, sweetheart. It's time to pack up and go home." Or, "Do we have to?" "I'm afraid so," the man stated as he carefully picked himself up off the ground. He began to pack their things while the little girl named Leia continued to beg him to stay. "Can we stay for another 5 minutes? Please?" The Sith apprentice watched the exchange between them curiously. Why was he having this dream? Zekalov gasped in fear and hid himself behind a thick tree trunk and peered around it cautiously once he saw the unmistakable form of Anakin Skywalker stride into view. Why was he here? He waited until Anakin had his back turned to him before he made any sudden moves. The boy darted stealthily from one tree to the next and kept to the shadows to avoid being seen. He got a bit closer, close enough to hear what Anakin was saying to Leia. "Leia, who is your mommy?" Anakin never got his answer, for the girl told him she had to go, and Leia ran back to her guardian. Why was Skywalker concerned about the identity of the girl's mother? The dream soon dissipated until he was standing in a black void. Then he saw a growing light and began to hear sounds. He began to walk out of a dark tunnel and out onto the bustling streets of a large metropolis. Zekalov walked around in fascinated awe as he viewed the towering skyscrapers that stretched endlessly into the sky. Speeders of every sort whizzed past the bustling streets and in the sky lanes in every direction. The traffic patterns here were pure chaos. He walked over to peer over a railing and quickly stumbled back from the dizzying height that gave way to a deepening dark below. He was on Coruscant. What in the seven hells? Wasn't he still a prisoner? Zekalov looked down to see he was still wearing the same Sith attire he had been wearing when he fought Ahsoka before landing in the brig of Kit Fisto's Republic cruiser. None of this made sense. All of this seemed so real. Suddenly the dream shifted and he was standing awkwardly on the balcony of a dwelling near Anakin Skywalker and the Senator Amidala. Was this the Senator's home? Zekalov was frozen in fear. He began to relax once he realized that this virtual, dream version of Anakin was not an actual presence in this odd dreamscape. Anakin called Senator Amidala by a different, more personal name. Padme was pregnant. Zekalov felt a little awkward as he listened in on their private conversation concerning Padme's unborn child. The boy's reptilian eyes widened when he came to discover that Anakin and Senator Amidala were actually married. Anakin Skywalker was going to be a father. Wasn't it against the Jedi Code to have a family? "I know what I want to name her," Padme smiled warmly while rubbing a hand over her slightly swollen belly. "Huh? How do you know the baby is a girl?" Anakin laughed. "It's just a feeling, a very strong feeling." Anakin shook his head with a rueful smile and put his ear against Padme's stomach, listening. "Nah, I'm pretty sure you're wrong. It's a boy." Now it was Padme's turn to laugh. "What makes you so sure? Don't tell me you are cheating using your Force powers." "I wouldn't dream of it, Angel." The married couple kissed. The dream changed again, only this time the images and sounds began to pass in rapid succession. Zekalov heard Palpatine's promise to teach Anakin how to save Padme after learning that Anakin had nightmares concerning the future death of his wife in childbirth. Then he saw Anakin slay quite a few separatist dignitaries on Mustafar, followed by the execution of something called Order 66 and the destruction of the Jedi Temple along with most of the Jedi. Anakin killed a room full of little younglings in cold blood. What was it that caused Anakin to savagely fall to the dark side like this? Zekalov's eyes widened and a breath hitched in his throat when he found himself in what had to be the office of Chancellor Palpatine, only in place of the Chancellor was the Sith Lord, Darth Sidious. Anakin Skywalker was kneeling at his feet. "Rise, Darth Vader," Darth Sidious commanded in a deep, dark tone that spoke of unspeakable malice. The boy shivered. Darth Sidious sure looked and sounded creepy. Did Darth Sidious kill the Chancellor? There was a broken window in the office. Maybe, the Sith Lord threw the Chancellor through the glass, thus executing him. Good riddance. Zikalov hated the Chancellor. It was his fault that so many good people had to die in the Republic's never-ending war. The dream began to flash more rapidly now, in bits and pieces. Anakin was turned into an evil, black-suited cyborg after being burned by lava during a duel with Obi-Wan Kenobi. So the Jedi student eventually turned against his master. Interesting. Zikalov honestly wasn't sure at this point which pieces of the dream began in any sort of actual sequence. How far between were these events and when were they to happen? None of this made sense. Dreaming of the future without the aid of the Force was impossible. The boy knew without any question or the shadow of a doubt that this dream was in fact a possible future. Zikalov then began to drift between waking and sleeping and wasn't entirely sure what was real and what wasn't. He heard the shuffling of booted feet. The sound of shackles clinking and clanking. Tighten those restraints, men. We can't have him getting away. Keep a close around-the-clock guard. The swishing sounds of automatic doors opening and closing numerous times. Voices kept warbling, some faint and others loud. It began to confuse Zikalov and was becoming rather annoying. Until he heard one sentence that completely shattered his dream state. Alert me if Anakin attempts to enter this cell. Do not under any circumstances grant my apprentice access to this prisoner. Yes, sir. Then the sound of retreating feet out of a doorway graced his ears. He was now alone. Zikalov jolted awake as his fight-or-flight instinct kicked in. Once he had truly regained consciousness, he took in his new surroundings and groaned in complete disgust to see that his circumstances really hadn't changed much. And what was worse, the Republic lackeys stole his war mask. He felt his rage slowly building. Now he truly felt naked, being stripped of both the Force and one of his most prized possessions. Despite the fact he was in a completely different cell, he could feel that he was no longer on any star cruiser. He came to the frightening conclusion that he must be on Coruscant. Great, out of the frying pan and into the fire. The son of General Grievous found himself still shackled in Force inhibitor restraints but no longer restrained to a bed. He looked down at his cuffed wrists and had to do a double take when he noticed that the power cell generating the Force dampener was in fact malfunctioning, causing the cuffs to sporadically flicker on and off. Is that how the Force gave him that dream? That seemed unlikely, given the fact that the Force inhibitor shackles on his ankles appeared to be functioning at peak level. Still, the boy supposed it was a possibility. Wait, if these Force inhibitors aren't completely functional, maybe I can access the Force briefly and escape. Only if I'm not already in the Jedi Temple. Zikalov had a feeling that escape from the Jedi Temple was going to be the very definition of impossible. He had no idea just how many Jedi strolled through its many halls. Maybe he could disguise himself as a Jedi somehow. He soon shut his eyes and groaned in despair when he realized that aside from the Force, he was missing the one crucial and most important tool that held any true value. Bantha shit. My lightsaber. How will I escape without that? He slowly sat up and stretched stiff arms and legs and cracked his cramped neck and back. He had been unceremoniously deposited onto this very hard and rather uncomfortable slab that was supposed to serve as a bed. It was completely devoid of a mattress, pillow, and blanket. A small shiver raced down his spine when he spotted a security camera high on the ceiling in a corner of the room that was aimed right at him. He instantly stiffened as his heart hammered wildly within his chest when he had the scary feeling that he was being watched. It wasn't long before he received his first visitor. Zikalov used his Sith training to enhance a fearless image and slowly sat back down on the berth and kept his back to the wall. He pulled both knees halfway up to his chest and hid his malfunctioning wrist cuffs in the confines of his lap, hoping that no one had noticed them from the security monitors. He stoically met the gaze of one of his father's most hated archenemies. To what do I owe this pleasure, Obi-Wan Kenobi? Zikalov asked flatly with eyes narrowed defiantly. The Jedi Master straightened his posture and clasped hands behind his back. I see that there is no need for any introductions, young warrior. Do you know where you are right now? A brief flicker of fear flashed in Zikalov's eyes at the question as the memories concerning his first interrogation surfaced to the forefront of his mind. With an angry grimace, he pushed the disturbing memory down and focused on the Jedi Master as he regarded the question. What does it matter if I know where I am or not? Zikalov angrily huffed. Kenobi made no comment and kept his former question hanging. Zikalov rolled his eyes when he realized the Jedi wasn't going to speak again until he did. I'm pretty sure I'm not on the former Republic cruiser, for which I'm grateful. I'm obviously in a prison. Zikalov ground out the last bit between gritted teeth as his eyes once again reflected the anger he was currently feeling towards his current role as captive. He curled in on himself further as his discomfort for his situation steadily grew. Obi-Wan looked a little surprised by his remark. Why would the boy be thankful for transferring from the Republic assault ship to this carefully guarded prison? Did something happen to you aboard that ship? The Jedi had a feeling that something traumatic happened to the boy that he himself had heard no word of. Was he abused by the troopers? Zikalov looked at Obi-Wan distrustfully. Why did this Jedi care? What's it matter to you? I'm a Sith apprentice. I'm what all of you Jedi hate. I'm your prisoner. Remember. Zikalov, if something happened to you that was completely unwarranted, I must know. The Jedi Master was patient enough to wait for the boy's next remark. The Kalish child, now devoid of his war mask, looked so lost and uncertain. Was that fear he had seen in the boy's eyes? The son of Grievous eyed Kenobi suspiciously. What was this Jedi's hidden motive? He couldn't be serious, could he? He shook his head and cast his eyes downward. It doesn't matter. All of you hate me. That alone should spell it out for you, Zikalov growled as his anger began to lose its potency. He then rested his head on his knees and clenched his 4-digit clawed hands into fists within his lap. The time was drawing near for him to make his move. Young one, if someone has committed some wrong against you, Kenobi began but was quickly cut off. Yes, many of you have, Zikalov hissed icily as his golden-hued eyes met Kenobi's blue ones once again. Who? I can't tell you that. What I can tell you is that it all began when a Jedi named Telariel kidnapped me from my home when I was a very young child before my father saved me. Ah yes, I remember Telariel. I do believe she went rogue. She was sent on a mission that was mainly to oversee a peace treaty between the Rhodians and the Separatists. I have no idea why she kidnapped you. The Jedi Council had no knowledge concerning her unwarranted actions and we never sanctioned your kidnapping. Obi-Wan looked and sounded incredibly confused as he stroked his bearded chin in thought. Lies. She told me herself that the Council sent her on a secret mission to kidnap me. They told her that if I became a Jedi, that I would help all of you defeat my father. She betrayed my race by joining the filthy likes of you. I am a member of the Jedi Council, Zikalov. I would have known if that were true. I can assure you that it isn't. If Telariel kidnapped you, it was for her own personal agenda. You have my word. Your word cannot be trusted. You have no idea, Obi-Wan, just what the Jedi were responsible for. They did a lot of terrible things that befell my people on Kali. Research it. You might find the literature interesting, Zikalov growled. Unfortunately, the past cannot be changed, young Zikalov. That's true, Kenobi. It's the future that can be changed. With a rather unpredictable and lightning-fast move, the boy propelled himself from off the slab onto Obi-Wan's startled form. Zikalov knocked the Jedi Master over and kicked him in the head on the way down. It was almost a sense of déjà vu when he briefly remembered pulling a similar such stunt on Kit Fisto. The boy regained his footing and slammed his wrists against the ground and succeeded in deactivating the force inhibitor restraints. He would worry about deactivating the ones on his ankles later. The boy felt pain as he broke through part of the force block that was currently still engaged, courtesy of the shackles still chained to his feet, but he miraculously managed to snag a brief hold of the force. It was quite difficult to pull Obi-Wan's lightsaber into his outstretched hand. It was amazing what adrenaline and desperate determination could do. He was very fortunate that Obi-Wan had been stunned from his kick as long as he had. Zekalov used the lightsaber to slash through the force inhibitors on his wrists and ankles and wasted no time in running full kilter towards the door. He knew it would be locked. He had no doubt that his enemies had been watching him the entire time. Damn security cameras. The Jedi Master behind him had already recovered himself by the time Zekalov made the decision to use the lightsaber to cut his way through the door. It was a rather foolhardy idea considering how long it would actually take to cut through a door as thick as the one in front of him. He didn't even have the chance to begin because Obi-Wan's words stopped him cold, forcing him to turn back around. "Did you really think you would get very far?" Obi-Wan questioned in what sounded like mild amusement as he calmly began dusting off his tunic. Zekalov tightly gripped Kenobi's blue lightsaber in his fist, knowing the Jedi would in all likelihood try to pull it out of his hand. How many times had his own master, Count Dooku, done the same to him? Zekalov learned quite well how to resist such a move. At least that man had been good for something. "You better believe it. I am getting out of here one way or another. Now do the smart thing, and let me go." "I'm afraid that's not possible. You will be here for some time, I assure you. It's for your own protection that we've located you to this place. You nearly killed Anakin's Padawan." Zekalov narrowed his eyes and held the lightsaber up defensively in a fighting stance. He came up with a brilliant idea and felt stupid for not thinking of it before. He stretched a hand out towards the sealed door behind him and used the force to slowly bend the door inwards, preferably off its hinges, never once taking his eyes off of Kenobi. "A job that I swear by my father's name that I will finish." The Kalish boy snarled as his rage rose to the surface. Obi-Wan stood serenely in the same place and simply observed the Sith child's actions and made no move to stop him. The wise Jedi Master could see it was difficult for one as young as Zekalov to multitask when it came to a prison break. The boy's attention was focused on him, their private conversation, his grip on Obi-Wan's lightsaber, and his slippery hold on the Force as he concentrated on slowly breaking down the door. It was truly remarkable that this child was even attempting such a feat. "I don't think you understand the gravity of the situation, young one. My apprentice is quite displeased for what you did to Ahsoka. He wants nothing more than to see justice done upon you, regardless of your age." "You mean he wants to kill me?" "Frankly, I'm not surprised." Zekalov scoffed with a smirk that clearly spoke volumes of what he believed he knew about Anakin. "Anakin may be rash, but he would never dream of killing you. Revenge, no matter how tempting, is not the Jedi way. You know, I've heard legends concerning the Chosen One and how he is supposed to bring balance to the Force. Did it ever occur to any of you Jedi that Anakin may in fact turn against you one day? The balance between light and dark has been thus far completely unbalanced. Aside from my master Dooku, there are only 2 Sith right now. How many Jedi are there, Kenobi? Hundreds? Thousands?" Obi-Wan remained silent as he listened to the boy, and part of what young Zekalov said struck a very personal chord within him. Anakin was known for his aggression and anger, but he had pledged himself to the path of light. The Jedi Master never liked to entertain the possibility of Anakin giving in to his darkest of feelings. His apprentice had been trained well and knew, for the most part, how to control himself. This had to be a ruse. Anakin, despite his anger, would never act upon those feelings. "Then why did you say moving me here was for my own protection?" Zekalov raised an eyebrow suspiciously. "You are now Coruscant. News has spread globally of your presence here. There are many citizens that would like nothing more than to harm the son of General Grievous in retribution for your father's actions. You may have forgotten, but we are still at war." Zekalov had lowered his guard and swore furiously at himself when Obi-Wan successfully force-ripped his lightsaber from his hand. He should have killed the damn Jedi Master when he had the chance. The boy internally knew that killing a Jedi Master was incredibly difficult and was no easy feat. There was a high chance that he would have failed such an attempt. Damn. Why does this always happen? Zikolov cursed within his own mind as he lost his precarious hold on the force as his concentration slipped. The door stopped bending and the child stood panting for breath from all of the exertion. He remained in a defensive stance and never took his eyes off of Kenobi in the event the Jedi Master tried to pull a fast one on him. The Jedi Master clipped the now deactivated blue blade to his belt. With a subtle hand gesture towards the camera mounted above him on the wall, a silent order was given to the Republic troopers standing guard just outside the cell. 4 Republic troopers kicked the severely damaged door down and barged in without warning. They immediately grabbed the boy. They ignored his angry shouts of protest as they roughly began to manhandle him. In his anger, Zikolov force pushed a trooper into the far side of the wall, where the man fell upside down. His helmeted head soon met the unforgiving durasteel floor. "Hey! Get off me! Let me go!" The boy continued to lash out at them and refused to play the role of the silent, cooperative prisoner. His cries of dismay were completely ignored as Obi-Wan silently oversaw Zikolov's confinement. New force inhibitor restraints were slapped on his wrists and ankles. The child despaired as his connection with the force was lost once again. He angrily kicked the clone trooper responsible for shackling his feet in the head and earned a satisfying cry of alarm from the Republic soldier. 2 of them, one on each side of him, grabbed him roughly by his arms and began to half carry and half drag him out of the damaged cell unit and into the hallway. As they were carrying him, he angrily kicked a clone trooper in the shin and managed to wriggle out of the trooper's grasp for a moment to punch the other one in the arm. Zikolov didn't care if it hurt his hand or not, he just wanted to be free. His pitiful, physical attacks hardly fazed any of them, but yet they were wearing armor. The boy was not happy when they entered another cell and restrained him to a different bed, similar to the one on the Republic cruiser commanded by Kit Fisto. At least this new cell was white instead of grey, and the bunk they tied him down on did have a mattress and a pillow. He tried biting the gloved hand of a trooper who was strapping his chest down and earned a rough slap to the face in response, effectively stunning him. The trooper hit him. He actually hit him. "Oh, it's war now, Buckethead. You damn clones finally signed your death warrants. Just wait. Just you wait until I'm free again. You'll all be sorry and you'll wish you never met me." Zikolov screamed in absolute fury. He wasn't sure at this point if he was screaming in rage or angrily crying. It sort of felt like both. His eyes widened considerably when one of the clones pulled out a big-ass needle. The syringe was filled with a greenish liquid and the child figured it was probably a sleep agent of some sort. The clone flicked the tip of the needle and squeezed some of the liquid out to dislodge any air bubbles. Zikolov's useless struggles intensified when the clone lowered the needle down to his restrained arm. "No. Stop. What the hell do you think you are doing? I swear by the gods of my ancestors that you will all pay for this." The clone never dignified him with a response. He saw the needle slide effortlessly into his shoulder but oddly enough, didn't feel a thing. That was weird. Oh no. He fought the powerful sedative with all of his might but soon found his efforts utterly useless. He blinked trying to keep his eyes from blurring, but whatever drug they just used on him was incredibly strong. Zikolov was really getting sick of this crap despite the fact it was only the 3rd time he'd been rendered unconscious so far. The last image that faded from his view was the outline of Obi-Wan Kenobi standing just above him. The Jedi's words followed him into a deep, dreamless sleep, bringing with them unspeakable dread. "Rest now, young Zikolov. Tomorrow your fate will be determined by the Jedi Council." The world went dark. Once the child was utterly unconscious, Obi-Wan followed the troopers outside. "Keep the boy sedated once he awakens. Make sure he is fed but do not release him. Keep him under heavy guard. Master Plo Koon should be returning within the next few hours and will assist you here." "Yes, sir." Captain Rex saluted but stopped Kenobi by one arm before he could truly walk away. "General, what do you think the Jedi Council will do?" Obi-Wan's face fell and he shook his head sadly. "I honestly don't know. I'm entrusting the boy's safety to you, Rex. I know there may be a few of your troops that hold a heavy grudge against Grievous and would like nothing more than to act upon some foolhardy revenge scheme against our young prisoner. Keep me posted should anything occur. Yes, sir. Obi-Wan had great faith in Captain Rex. He was a great leader and a good soldier. The Jedi Master took a turbo lift up a few floors and took a speeder back to the Jedi Temple. He made sure to keep Zekalov's whereabouts top secret. It wasn't just Anakin he had to worry about. There were many other Jedi who had a settle to score with the general of the droid armies. Of course, it was not the Jedi way to commit any acts of vengeance, but what had Obi-Wan worried was when justice and revenge became one and the same.